Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a very special and very interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the special edition Katsu KS-T1 in ZDP 189, DLC coded ZDP 189, Damascus, and Zirconium. Now, before we get started here, I'd like to point out Katsu actually requested that I give this knife away on a live stream. So I'm going to do that tonight. That's part of the reason why you guys are getting this review so early. I'm going to give this away actually tonight. If you're watching this video on the day that I uploaded it, tonight, my live stream will start at 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, and this will actually go to somebody in the live stream who's participating. So feel free to join me if you would like to pick this up, because this is a super nice knife. It was really kind of Katsu to donate this for giveaway, so thank you very much. For those of you who want to check this knife out, it is available in a couple different forms, actually 3 different forms. I'm going to link them all right down below in the description, so you guys can check them out if you want to. It does help my channel when you use those links, but that's entirely up to you. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. And please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Now, of course, this is a review. So while I appreciate, the free knife and the opportunity to give it away, I'm still going to review it. But wow, there are some impressive features here. There's a bunch of really great stuff. There's a couple of kind of weird, quirky things, but we're going to go over all of it. Let's go ahead and measure this knife. Overall length of the Katsu here coming in at not as big as I really would have guessed. 7.65 inches. If you measure all the way to the little lanyard loop thing, okay, you could call it 7.75, but realistically, 7.65. Blade length, actually pretty good here. 3.35 inches of blade and 3¼ inches of cutting edge. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons up against the 8010 and 8020.5. Any custom scales you find in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and others. So you can see here, it's actually just a little bit bigger than the 8020.5, though I think it's probably because of how loud the design is, right? There's just a lot going on. This is a really weird knife. It really looks and feels bigger. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? Where are you at? There you are. Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3. You can see here, once again, closer, I think, to the size of the Para 3, but a little bit larger for sure. And then finally, let's put it up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue, and the Hogue Deca. Almost exactly the same overall size as the Hogue Deca. How's the action? So Katsu is a knife company that I wasn't 100% sure about in the beginning. And I gotta say, this knife is supremely high quality. It's not just the flashy materials. If you're new to knives and you're like, what's all these weird numbers and codes and words that he said about the materials in the beginning? I have no idea what that means. These are not cheap materials. In fact, you're going to be hard pressed to find another knife on the market that is using exactly the same blade material, the same coating, which, by the way, it's very real. I'll demonstrate here in a second. The same front scale material and the same overlay material. You are hard pressed to find something else on the market that costs the same or less than this. It is very expensive. Look, I'm sure you already looked up the price. And by the way, there's another version of it. It's the front scale the front overlay is Zircotai, which is Damascus with zirconium layered in on top of zirconium. And it's the same price. This is very exotic stuff, right? Now, are you gaining an enormous amount of utility in terms of the materials? Well, in terms of the blade steel and the coating, yes. In terms of everything else, it's more decorative. But still, those are not cheap materials. There's a reason why you don't see this stuff coming in under what they've got this priced at, right? It is very impressive. But I need to be clear. I'm not saying the knife is cheap. It's obviously expensive. I'm saying it's very competitive, right, when we're comparing apples to apples. Anyways, the action, wow, the action's actually very good. You can see there, it's ready to go. The detent is phenomenal. The front flipper, while I am not the biggest fan of knives that are front flipper only, it actually works really well. I do need to point out, as some of you watched on my live stream, if your index finger is here, if this is where you're bracing, which is actually typically where you brace on a front flipper, that hook is going to come around and pinch the beans out of your finger. You need to have it back behind this ledge and then front flip it, in which case it works just fine. Personally, I would have preferred it was just a flipper or a thumb stud opener. Front flipper only, while it does add to the weird, quirky personality of this knife, because it really is, it is a weird design, right? I would have preferred a different deployment mechanism. But for the one that they give you, it's fine, and access to the lock bar is actually pretty good. The edges are also knocked down, so it looks pretty angular, and in some areas it's a little bit awkward. Nothing is really sharp. Nothing feels out of place. It also feels like it was built by a company who not only cares about their product, but knows how to tune a detent, right? And how to make the operation, like the deployment mechanisms, work with the design, which is not something you can just slap together. Believe me, we have lots of companies who try, and I point it out when it doesn't work. You can't just slap something together, right? You gotta tune it. And this knife is tuned. It's very smooth. And that detent, listen to this. Oh, that's nice. That's crispy, folks. Real crispy. Pretty good. I'm honestly pretty happy with it. Carry profile, let's do thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. Really not all that thick. It's maybe just a hair thinner. Length and height up against the PM2. And the Para 3, where's the PM2? There it is right there. So closed up, really this wasn't much of a problem in the pocket. You guys know I don't do extensive, wild, like month-long testing. I just carry it for a few days, just cut some normal stuff with it. I'm a design reviewer, so as long as it locks up solid, it's easy to operate, right? The materials are legitimate, right? They've put some effort in. That's what I look for, right? So the nice thing is that we have some pretty conclusive stuff to talk. I mean, in terms of referencing that the materials are what they say they are. So that's cool. But anyways, the carry profile of this really wasn't much of a problem for me. The pocket clip was a little bit pinchy, and man, the tip of that is so sharp. Like, I don't know why they decided to do that, but the clip is pinchy, and it also is, the retention's, pretty bad. I'm sorry, pretty bad. It's pretty good in terms of retention. But in and out of the pocket, it was a bit pinchy. This bill is a bit shallow, a bit long, and a bit pointy. So that was awkward. But as far as carrying the knife, not much of a problem. Even with that heavy zirconium front scale. The profile, it looks weird, but it doesn't really create any issues. A little longer than the Para 3 with that unicorn horn. A little shorter than the PM2, not quite as tall as either. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'm going to get out my tools. As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. So the pivot, oh boy, I didn't check this before we got started. There's a reason that this was already in here, and I'll demonstrate here in just a second. Oh, well, that's why. I have a T9 in there. Stupid. Okay, who uses T9? T8. The pivot is almost certainly a T8, yes. Now, I don't have to check these other screws. They're all T6. There's less than you would think for this being a sandwich construction frame lock with overlays. They only have the overlay on one side, so you have two screws for the overlay, which I know some people don't like, but listen, if they try to do adhesive, it almost always comes off. You don't want that. Hidden screws on the inside would have been better, I agree, but you got screws on the outside, okay. Screw here, right? This screw I think is going through both. This screw on the pocket clip goes through and goes into the backspacer, and then we have another screw over here. Not bad. As long as you have the right tools for the job, you should be good to go. While I've got this out, let's go ahead and do this. I tested this off camera. I'm going to go ahead and do it on camera to confirm it. So, if you take a steel bit and you scratch the blade up, right? Ooh, that's going to make some people cringe. Benchmade's coating. Yeah, you can see it a little bit, right? Now, can you wipe that off? No, not really. You're still going to see it. Some of that is probably the pulverized material of the bit, which is steel, by the way, into the coating, right? I think this is Cerakote, what Benchmade uses. It might be PVD. Uncoated blade, I mean, yeah, that's what's going to happen. I think it might be a little bit hard to see. We can see a couple little scratches there, right? But that's permanently in there. Now, on the DLC coating, right? Oh, I see the line. Nope, actually, That's the San Mai line. But if we wipe this clean, you'll see there's no mark on this whatsoever outside of it's almost like a hand-rubbed satin finish DLC. This is real DLC. DLC is the best coating that you can get on a knife. Now, a lot of companies will state DLC, but it's not. It's not really DLC. They just state it. I don't know how they get away with that, but real DLC is very hard. Very, very hard. Much harder than the steel itself. And the real stuff will resist scratching. Now, if you take this out into your driveway and you grind it against the pavement, maybe, because rocks are pretty hard, right? But stuff like a steel bit, no, it won't. I mean, it's the same thing like that I tested with Kunwu. Their stuff is real. Spyderco's DLC, it's real. Theirs is chalky, though, so a lot of people will take a bit or something like this and they'll grind it into their Spyderco and they'll say it left a mark. It didn't leave a mark. What it did is it pulverized whatever you ground into it into powder, and that powder is stuck in the pores of that chalky DLC finish, right? Unless you actually threw a cinder block at your knife, in which case maybe it did scratch it. But for the most part, DLC will really resist scratching. And I'm happy to say this is real. This is real DLC. They did a nice job. What do I mean by cord ZDP? So this is actually a San Mai style. As far as it's kind of hard to see the core here, but you can see it right there. We have a core of ZDP 189, and then whatever, I believe it's the company who creates, is it Hitachi? Whatever they use for the jacket on this stuff. I've been seeing this a lot, the San Mai style ZDP. This is great. Whatever it is likely adding stainless and toughness properties to it. I can't really confirm that. But the core is actually ZDP 189. I believe Katsu stuff has been tested by members of the community, and it is ZDP. They use the Vickers scale. They've got HRC and HV. The HV is Vickers scale, and it's rated at 901, which converts to 66.5 Rockwell, which is in the optimal zone, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to ZDP 189. That's pretty cool. And I can tell you, the edge definitely shrugged everything off that I used it for, which was very light, not enough to really test it, but cardboard cutting, things like that. It's sharp, and it's definitely holding an edge, and the edge itself is actually done very, very well. That's pretty cool. So I didn't, I don't normally do testing like this on coatings and stuff like that, but anymore, like when companies claim that it's DLC, I think it's probably worth testing. And this is, which is cool. All of the materials, what they're claiming they are, right? It's important to point out because Katsu is a relatively new company, at least to me on this channel. So I think it's a good idea to test this stuff a little bit. Anyways, let's go ahead and weigh the knife. So this front scale is zirconium, right? And it looks a little marked up. It's my fingerprints. Polished zirconium is a fingerprint magnet, which is going to be a downside for a lot of people. In fact, any polished surface on a knife is going to be a bit of a fingerprint magnet. But zirconium is very heavy. It's much heavier than titanium. So that's why this is going to come in heavier than you might expect. At, well, not bad, 4.5 ounces. Now, a lot of people are going to say, oh, they should have done both sides in zirconium. They can't, because you can't do a frame lock out of zirconium. The lock bar tension would be all sorts of... Titanium is very springy and forgiving, right? So it makes for a good lock side. You cannot do zirconium on both sides. Now, would it have been cool to do a zirconium front scale and then a thinner zirconium rear scale with a liner lock, like a titanium liner lock? Yes, but I bet it would have been quite a bit more expensive, right? So I get it, and I agree, but would have been a lot more expensive, which makes it less accessible to more people. Anyways, let's go ahead and measure the blade stock thickness real quick. The blade stock thickness on this knife is coming in at 133, that's about the middle of the road, 133 thousandths or so, about middle of the road. All right, meat and potatoes time. This is a really weird looking knife. What is this up here, that little rectangle? Is that a button? Is it a button lock? No, it's just just an isolated rectangle of Timascus that they put up there. I don't know why. It really does look out of place, but okay. The shape of the overlay is just bizarre. It does not follow any specific pattern. It even ledges itself over the zirconium here. So while I do believe that it was on purpose, it's very random. It's very like random in like a designy way. Do I think it looks good? I don't know. It's hard for me to say if it looks good. I'm just so distracted by the fact that first of all, the quality of the Timascus is very, very good. And the vibrancy of the colors is very good. The camera's not doing this justice. If I were to take some Windex and shine this up a bit, boy, this will pop. The orange, the magenta, the purple, the blue, all that stuff in there. Their zircotite also looks really, really good. A lot more deep indigo purple, right, mixed in with that zirconium. The contrast of that with the polished zirconium scale, which is definitely not something that we see very often in the knife world, especially in the production knife world, is just wild to me. They really were just going for nutso kind of like, let's combine a bunch of like really exotic materials and cater specifically to the knife enthusiasts of the world who are shopping for something like this and also might actually plan to use their knives. And they managed to balance things out pretty well. Really, the whole thing is pretty good. Ergonomically, it's not my favorite thing in the world. It's kind of an awkward thing to hang on to. It's not uncomfortable. It's not sharp. It just is weird, right? Now, it's fully usable, and they honestly extended the jimping out to a really utilitarian zone, so I like that. It's just kind of a weird thing to hang on to. The pocket clip, because it doesn't like swoop up, that pointy end doesn't go into your hand, but boy, if you touch it, it's definitely sharp, really needlessly sharp. Katsu, you got to round that thing off. Another thing that I don't like, a couple of areas here where the billboarding just looks bad. It says Katsu on the front, right? This is a Japanese knife designer. Some of you will recognize that name, some of you won't, right? But the Katsu logo right here, and it's like in contrast with the polished blade. Like, man, we do not want to look at that. Katsu, I get you want to put your logo on this stuff. Shrink it way down and put it right up here on what I call the shoulder of the frame. Honestly, that's what I do. Having it out here in the middle, especially on a black blade like this, it really just doesn't look very good. And I can also understand that the designer wants their name on the knife. Again, shrink it down and put it in the flat of the blade if it needs to be on there. But on the clip, it just looks bizarre, especially it has such a matter-of-fact font to it, and the whole knife, the contrast here between the font of Katsu and the font of the designer, it's just so weird because it's like, I don't know, man. It's just like it's like drinking a Diet Coke and a Lamborghini. It's just a weird combination, you know, like it's just so basic and out of place. But everything else is fine. The pivot is a bit of a head scratcher as well. The pivot really seems out of place. It's kind of designy and cool. It's the only satin part of the knife outside of the pivot collar on the other side. Honestly, you probably should have done a zirconium pivot collar or a black pivot collar and a plain black pivot. That's honestly what I would have done. It's bizarre to me that we made these choices here, but okay. Now, do I think this is a deal breaker? No, I think it's just kind of an eyesore. It's a weird choice on such a otherwise objectively beautiful knife, right? Love it or hate it, it's pretty extreme. Now, some people are going to love this knife. Fortunately, it doesn't have too wacky of a profile. Like if you take away all the lines of the overlay and everything, it's still a knifey profile, right? Almost like it's like the CRKT squid, but you kind of squished it out, like if it was made of silly putty. That's kind of, I guess, what it reminds me of. This area back here, I'm not sure if it's designed as an alternative position for your thumb. Like if you're going to hold the knife back here, I'm not sure what benefit it gives you while holding it like this. It might just be a design line. It might just be something to kind of make the spine of the handle look a little bit unique. Everything is done well, though, and I need to stress that fit and finish, whatever you think of the aesthetic of the knife, how they've positioned the overlay, the shape or profile of the handle, whatever you think of that, the fit and finish of this knife is very, very good. They did not leave any edges unfinished. The seating of the hardware is very good. Seating of the pivot is good. The cutting bevel is very, very good, and it is symmetrical on both sides. They didn't give us a wacky smile on the back end here. The sharpening choil is good. Flat looks good. Swedge looks good. Everything is great. Even the lines on the blade where they have done the polishing, all straight, all consistent. It's very, very nice. This was very professionally made. There's a backspacer. It's just a backspacer, and it comes down to a weird, super small lanyard hole that will be kind of difficult to jam 550 paracord through, but all right, it's there if you want it. The pocket clip is, as far as I can tell, only going to be, I mean, it is, because if you flip it over, it's going to be angled the other way. It'd be weird. This is right hand only. They did make the pocket clip out of zirconium, which is interesting. And the only reason that I questioned that initially is because it was a lot easier to not bend, but it was a lot easier to pull the pocket clip up than I would have suggested. So I'm looking for a pocket clip. I want to look at the, or I'm sorry, a pocket clip. Looking for a flashlight. I want to look at the underside of this. Yeah. So this is all zirconium, and it looks cool. It's neat to have a zirconium pocket clip. It wouldn't be the first time I've seen a pocket clip made out of zirconium. I just didn't expect, I expected it to be much more stiff, right? Which is part of the reason why you can't do, and it's also not the right surface to contact with the steel of the blade when you want the blade to lock out. As far as I understand, it's just not the right material. But it's interesting. Pocket clip, you need to round this off and I honestly shorten it up. I'd like it like way back here, but okay. Carry depth about right here. In and out of the pocket, like I said, a little pinchy because that bill is so long, and this, it's not really a swoop. It's more of a, like an over curve. So it's a little bit awkward. And pocket clips that come up here and right along the spine of the frame, they always kind of bother me. It's kind of how Midgard's Messer does it. And it's a weird feeling in the hand. Again, it's not uncomfortable. It's just a little awkward, right? Truthfully, cutting, doing things like that, I don't think that this would really bother my hand too much. It's just not the most comfortable thing in the entire world. There is a steel lock bar insert that doubles as the over travel stop. We have honestly really great geometry, and the knife will survive a light triple tap, which is all the more that's required of me on this channel. So I have no issues with that. The lockup is completely and totally solid. There is no lock stick, no pivot lash, and it is very smooth and consistent in here. And we have a nice detent with perfect centering and no detent lash. So how much is this knife? It's $400. That's a lot of money, right? But holy moly, for the materials, right? If you're one of those people who reduces a knife's value to materials alone, well, yeah, I don't know where you're going to find better value on the market, right? This is pretty impressive. Now, if you don't like zirconium, there's a lot of people who don't like Damascus. I understand, right? Then obviously it's not going to be for you, right? But I think you can still see this and realize like it's a pretty good value. Should you be rushing out and buying this knife for $400? Like, are you buying better utility than what you can normally find on the market for less? No, obviously not. You can find a lifelong knife for under $100. In some cases, under $50, right? So the people who buy this, the people who it's made for, it is made for enthusiasts and collectors, for sure. But enthusiasts and collectors who actually do like to take their knives out and use them. This is a performer. It's a very exotic looking and expensive performer, right? But you're not buying dollar for dollar utility here. You're buying good utility and then a whole bunch of extra fancy stuff on top of it. So as long as you understand that, yes, it's a good value. If you are not looking for that, don't buy this knife. But man, if you are, yeah, this is really cool, and they're limited. So, I mean, you could call this a collector's item as well. Katsu, I would really like you to not stop making this knife, but okay, if you got to make it a limited edition, I would like to see you guys do more zirconium stuff. If you guys can pump this out, like I gotta wonder, what would this knife cost if it didn't have the Damascus overlay? What would it cost if you didn't do DLC and you just did M through 90? I mean, there's a lot of people I think who would like zirconium or different combinations of materials on knives like this. So I hope Katsu continues to be kind of a weird designy company that uses exotic materials when I say exotic, right? Exotic materials every now and then. Still expensive materials and stuff that we don't normally see, right? It's just for lack of a better word. I hope they continue to do that because this is really cool. Holy crap, please keep bringing us DLC coded ZDP 189. That's awesome. That's, I have to assume again that the jacket, whatever this is clad in, is assisting in the stainless properties, because ZDP is kind of a weird composition. You might look at it and think, oh yeah, it's stainless. Or, oh wait, look at the carbon content. Is it stainless? I don't know. It's kind of weird. But the cladding is probably helping with that. And also the DLC coating is definitely helping with that, making this blade a serious performer in a lot of different categories. So yes, please keep doing that. The polished the polished DLC is really cool. People like that. Keep working with materials like this. This is awesome. I can't wait to see what else they come out with. I love knowing that they're willing to do this stuff. And honestly, that they're willing to do this and bring us a great price, right? So yeah, obviously I'm not going to recommend this knife. It's not a, like to the general, like this isn't a knife that I think is like generally recommendable to people. But if you fall into one of the categories I was talking about, you will very much like it. If you like the look of this, if you look at this and say, I like how that looks, right? I like zirconium. I like Damascus. Big fan of the blade, right? I got $400 burning a hole in my pocket. I just want to know, is it made well? Is it tuned correctly? Is it reasonably comfortable? Yes, you'll love this, right? It's for you. For real. You would love this. Pick it up. Links in the description. If you're not that, or, enough of those boxes are not checked for you, then maybe not, right? Climb your own ladder. This is cool, though. So that's all I have to say. Thanks again to Katsu for sending this in and donating it for me to give away. Again, that'll be tonight. If you're watching this video on the exact day that I uploaded it, which is Friday, if you're watching this on exactly the day, what would that be? February 2nd? I'm recording it on January 31st, but I'm releasing it, I believe, on February 2nd. So if you're watching this on February 2nd, Friday, the live stream will take place tonight at 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. So come hang out. That's the only requirement. You don't have to buy anything or be a member of anything. Come hang out. If your name's drawn, it's yours. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.